Are you ready for paid media? So hopefully you've got a little bit of a grasp on this one prior to getting into this course, but we're going to break this down a little bit more. There's a lot of things that go into managing marketing at a large scale, but also particularly when you get into doing paid media. It's definitely kind of a sexy thing in the modern era to get into Facebook ads and Instagram ads and start placing ads all over the place. But there's a lot of things that go along with that. So we're gonna break down a couple of things that are going to be parts of your business and some mindset components that are going to determine whether you are really ready to be here or not. So the allure of paid media is something that grips a lot of young entrepreneurs as the next logical step after they've created a project. And seasoned investors tend to push paid media as the best growth channel for young brands. And there's a ton of case studies in the ecosystem that show the insane returns that change a small business what seems like overnight. And obviously paid media can work. We have this entire course for a reason. It absolutely can work, but it's only going to work if you're ready for it. And a lot of young entrepreneurs are fall victim to this idea of survivorship bias. So all of those case studies and all the videos you're seeing and all the webinars that we're consuming everywhere tend to only speak about the good outcomes, and we're not hearing about all of those bad ones. And you've heard this exact story before. We only talk about the good. There's a lot of good, and there's not a lot of discussion about failure. And this is creating a false sense of security around what it's like to get into paid media, and that paid media is going to be an absolute sure thing. And truly, it's not. As much as we wish that we could tell you that, we've seen it not work with people before, and it wasn't necessarily that it wasn't going to work ever. It just wasn't going to work at that moment in time. So this entire course is obviously about Facebook and Instagram advertising, but there's some concepts that we need to speak to as a whole, and make sure that your business is actually ready for this paid media. Otherwise, you're just wasting money in a space that's not going to help you. So, we're going to take this opportunity to educate on a couple of things that paid media isn't going to do. It's not going to create product market fit for you. It is expensive. You're spending money. It's not going to fix any of your site issues, any of the issues that you're having organically on your website. And it's only going to be good as the creative that you can put behind it. So we'll break each of those down here so you can understand exactly what we mean a little bit more. All right, so we're going to start off with the most intangible piece of this discussion, which is product market fit. So product market fit is basically the idea that once you have product market fit, your strangers are organically and consistently buying your product. This is, you don't have product market fit after you have done some sort of survey, and you don't have product market fit when your gut is just telling you that you're onto something, or even when you physically have a product in hand and are super excited about it. Until strangers, people who you do not know, not your friends and not your family, are consistently buying your product, you're not in a space to be ready for paid media. It will help once you're at a point, but it is not going to sell a bad product or fix an offer if you don't already have that product market fit. Ads are not going to sell anything that people already don't want. All right, this might feel a bit redundant, but we're going to highlight it anyway, just to reiterate and make sure it gets through your brain. Paid means money. You have to understand that you're putting money behind this. This all doesn't happen inside of a vacuum. You're not the only person that is thinking about putting their brand on Facebook and Instagram. It is a competitive space, and it is not a free way to gain traffic, and it's not cheap. It's been a growing space over the last few years, and even particularly now, as people are shifting their lives and everything to be more digital, it's a competitive space. So if you are not ready to spend money and spend money consistently, this is not the space to start fooling around with that. If you don't have a basic amount of budget, if you can't afford basically what we'll say $1,000 a month minimum to advertise your product, then it's really going to probably start to be a waste of time and money. And really, we would argue more money than that. If you're really not in a space that you can spend about $3,000 a month, particularly in the current market, it's a tough space. It's a tough sell. And while we're on this discussion about money and investment and all of this, if you're starting totally from scratch, you've got to be prepared to have a little bit of trial and error and throw some money at the wall and see what sticks. And it might feel like wasting money, but it is an unfortunate reality of starting in any sort of paid media account, especially if you don't have any data to start with. You have to test a lot of different stuff, and that's going to cost money and maybe isn't profitable right off the bat. You have to look at the kind of long tail efforts that are going to come with managing paid media. So, in addition to all of these things, are you willing to spend thousands of dollars to figure out who your audience is? This isn't meant to scare anybody away. We want you here, and we want you to use this platform. It is an incredibly powerful tool, but we also want to be realistic about what you can expect and what you're getting into, and so that you're mentally and financially and in every way possible prepared to get onto the platform. And then the other thing is to kind of look at your average order value, and if you have a relatively low average order value, then paid media might not be the right move right now for you. Acquiring a customer, we mentioned a couple of different ways now, costs money. And if you're selling an inexpensive, or I don't want to say cheap, to lessen maybe the value of your product, but if you're selling something that is a lower cost item, it's gonna be a tough market to make a return on that using Facebook and Instagram ads. Another important piece of the puzzle is your online store experience. Your brand matters and the experience matters, and the best ads in the world are not going to convert if your website is not quality. The user experience has to make sense and be easy and seamless. The website, brand, and product all need to look somewhat professional. The website has to be fast and particularly mobile friendly, especially in this modern age. When a website feels cheap or feels kind of thrown together, consumers, whether they're conscious of it or not, are going to start to paint their own picture of what your product is like too. So your website needs to be complete. It's got to talk about your shipping and return information, and your product pages should answer most of, if not all of the questions that people might have about a product, and have things like social proof, reviews, and testimonials. An easy way to kind of know if your web experience is up to par is looking at your conversion rate. Anything less than 1% conversion rate suggests that your user experience is off, or maybe it is the product itself. We'll go back to product market fit, but and it varies by industry, but typically we're looking for a conversion rate of at least 2 to 3% before getting into paid media. So we're kind of rolling this idea of fulfillment into our entire e-commerce experience, but it is typically something that is a very overlooked part of scaling a business, particularly when you get into paid media. So if everything works, if we get into Facebook and Instagram ads and you go from selling 25 whatever you've got, let's call it t-shirts today, and tomorrow you're selling 150, do you have the systems and processes in place in your business to support those additional sales? Do you have enough inventory to support those sales? How long is your lead time to secure that inventory? Do you have enough employees for pick, pack, and ship all these additional products? So if you don't have all of these mechanisms in place, or at least some sort of plan ready for them, then you need to answer these questions before you can really start talking about scaling your business inside and using paid media. Because if you get into all of this stuff, and like we mentioned in that example, you're selling 25 t-shirts today and tomorrow you're selling 150. Do you have all of that extra inventory to be able to sell? Do you have all of those people? Otherwise, now you might be looking at people kind of some bad reviews coming into your brand. Now we're kind of damaging your brand equity on something. We live in the modern era where people expect things to happen very quickly, and as much as we wish that they'd be more forgiving, maybe isn't always the case. All right, last but most certainly not least is content. So this generally tends to be the biggest point where the wheels come off the wagon. A lot of brands think that a couple of photos and one video is going to change their game. It's going to just absolutely blow the roof off the business. And the thing that you don't realize, or maybe don't realize, shouldn't assume, is that the brands that are winning on Facebook and Instagram are producing 15 times more content and creative than your average advertiser. The creative and the content really does matter. What separates a great ad from an okay ad is often that it's the photo or the video. So before you get into paid media, do you have a creative production system built out inside of your business? Do you value creative production the way that you need to for this to come out? Like, it can't just necessarily be a couple of iPhone photos that you take every 6 months. Content's got to be regularly coming through. One photo shoot a year is not going to cut it. So a better way to approach getting started with Facebook and Instagram ads is by already having all of that stuff to begin with, and then backfilling as you get more and more and more stuff going. Keeping all of that updated and fresh and new and unique on a regular cadence is the best way to go about it. So kind of wrapping all of these things up, content's our last piece of this puzzle. So if you answered no to any of those questions, can you afford to invest thousands of dollars in paid media? Do you have, honestly, product market fit? Do you have a professional looking and functioning online store? Can you fulfill more orders than you do right now? Can you produce creative on a regular basis? If you answered no to any of those questions, let's take a step back and understand maybe where your business is at, and maybe looking at other steps to take instead of jumping into paid media where there's a chance that money ends up wasted at this point in time in your business.